welcome. I'm Cynthia Corsetti, executive coach, author, and speaker based in Sewickley, Pennsylvania. With years of experience in guiding leaders to realize their full potential, I've embarked on a new journey to bring those insights to a wider audience. Care to Lead, a podcast dedicated to diving deep into the world of leadership. In each 30-minute episode, I sit down with inspiring individuals from diverse backgrounds to explore pivotal moments in their leadership journeys, the challenges they face in today's ever-evolving business landscape, and the legacy they aspire to leave behind. Together, we uncover valuable lessons and insights that can empower each one of us to lead with purpose, compassion, and resilience. So whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey, join me as we discover what it truly means to care to lead. Hello, today on the Care to Lead podcast, we have the privilege of welcoming Eziah Syed, a visionary leader and the founder of Mend. Eziah's journey is not just a story of business acumen, but also a testament to the power of empathy in leadership. His insights that he shared recently in a compelling interview with Authority magazine reveal how empathy isn't just a personal virtue, but a pivotal component in guiding teams and organizations as well towards success. With a background that encompasses both technological innovation and a deep commitment to understanding human emotions, Eziah stands as a beacon for leaders striving to create more compassionate and effective workplaces. Today, we're going to go deep into his philosophy and the practice of empathetic leadership, exploring how it shapes not only the culture of Mend, but also the broader landscape of leadership in the 21st century. And I am so excited to have this conversation. And I want to start by making sure that I didn't miss anything in this introduction.
Well, no, thank you, Cynthia, for that very, very kind introduction. And certainly an important topic that doesn't get discussed nearly enough. So I want to thank you and thank Authority magazine for taking this on. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
It's a big thing for me in my world as an executive coach. So I was like all about this topic. I was really glad that you took part in our interview series. In your interview, you mentioned how your personal experiences led you to value empathy and leadership. Could you share more about that and talk specifically about which ones influenced you and how they impact how you lead at Mend?
Yeah, well, my career has not been a linear path. Many people are, I think, perhaps more directive about kind of their vision on where they want to be from a career perspective. They wake up and decide either for themselves or they're guided in a direction of, I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be a scientist, or I want to be a trader. For me, I just had an instinct that I wanted to be in business. I didn't really know what that was, and have meandered through a variety of different interests, from being in finance and taking my CFA to really falling in love with psychology in my undergraduate. So I did a kind of double major and got an undergraduate in cognitive psychology, to working in startups, to working in large organizations. And the more one advances in one's career, the larger the responsibility comes. The biggest part of that is the growth in the number of people that one is responsible for in one's organization. And when you talk about the domain of people, perhaps no more important a thing than empathy in how we navigate the complexity that is human emotion and human experiences. We're all a bundle of experiences. And unpacking that and really understanding how to deal with humans effectively. One of the cornerstones of that is empathy. And so I've worked in very complicated environments, mature large businesses with very high performing people, and then in startups that are full of ambiguity and moving fast and a lot of uncertainty. And have developed, a perspective in different environments on kind of what it takes to ensure that you're managing people effectively.
Well, when it comes to empathy, I've been coaching executives for 15 years. And one of the things that I find is a common thread that goes through is they all say, yes, I want to be an empathetic leader, but really identifying what that means. What does it mean to be empathetic? I'd like to get your take on that.
I think, empathy involves really taking the effort to understand the perspectives, emotions, and the arousal of another human being in any particular situation. So it requires a little bit more emotional investment on one's part to step into the other person's shoes and truly feel what it is he or she might be feeling in that particular situation, and to really get into the kind of the emotional perspective of that person. I'm about to publish an article that I'm writing on dispassionate discourse, and so much of dispassionate discourse is being an active listener. And active listening is really about listening to understand, rather than listening to respond and to make a counterpoint, right? Listening to understand means I am really investing in your perspective and getting behind your lens and your eyes to emotionally feel the sets of perceptions, feelings, perspectives that you are bringing into any particular situation. So that's what empathy is. It's different than kind of just having, sympathy is one of the things you covered in your piece, in your article, is different than just feeling sympathetic towards a person. It's really a different level of emotional involvement.
I have an upcoming book called Dark Drivers. And one of the purposes behind that book is to help leaders have a new, I always say it's like putting empathy on steroids, because dark drivers are hidden memories and traumas and experiences that have happened in your past, and yet they still impact how you lead, how you become defensive in a meeting, how you become just reactive sometimes. And it's these emotional triggers that come from your past. And understanding that you have them is one thing, but when you truly understand that these drivers exist, you understand that every single person you lead has all of these things under the surface that we don't see. And to me, that's part of what it means to be empathetic, is I don't need to know what's going on. Like, I'm not your therapist, and I need to know there's more than what I see. And I think that what you just said about empathy and understanding that there's so much more to a person than meets the eye, I think that adds to that conversation as well.
Yeah, no, it's a really timely book. We refer back to that kind of that image that we've all seen of an iceberg, right? So, you see this stuff that's above the water, but then you look below the water and there's this enormous giant structure that is a totality of the iceberg. And when I said earlier, we're all, just a bundle of experiences that we've had in our lives, many good, many very deleterious and difficult, that have shaped our psyche. And we come into the workplace not as robots, but we come in as human beings that are full of cognitive biases. We're all processing stimuli differently, and it takes a level of intellectual humility in taking a pause and not being too arrogant with one's perspective, despite how much information, how much experience we may come into a particular position with, to take some intellectual humility and to pause and really listen, actively listen, to understand the person's perspective. It has a really profound effect when someone across from you feels like they're really listening, or really being heard. Their then openness to your point of view and your perspective. So it's this virtuous cycle of discourse that is created, that creates understanding, and ultimately finding common ground and understanding between disparate points of view. So it has really quite profound benefits.
What are some tips that you might offer to a leader to really listen for understanding? It sounds so, oh yes, I listen, but listening is hard. It's a skill, and it's something that has to be consciously considered and thought about. What tips do you have to offer to leaders to learn to be better listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've got this we've idealized and this caricature of this kind of this tough leader that is all about the bottom line, and doesn't demonstrate and show that soft side. And I think that is just profoundly misguided and misplaced. So the baseline, you can't fake caring. So the baseline, you just have to care genuinely about the feelings and emotions of your people, because if that sort of the entry level requirements not in place, you're never going to get to the level of empathy. And then, it's about developing some skills that I think can help, become more empathetic over time. One is that listening skill. I've been indoctrinated in thinking as a consultant, at Deloitte, when I spent 8 years there in global corporate strategy, is that you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and your ratio of listening to speaking should be at minimum that. I would bias even towards more listening. Listening and being quiet is an incredibly profound skill, and eliminates all kinds of things that that are hidden from you when you're speaking. Taking time to reflect on our interactions with the world, and being self-critical in thinking about how we might have approached a particularly difficult situation better. That's part of my article on dispassionate discourse, is when we're in that really passionate, aroused state, the fight or flight parts of our nervous system get activated, and cognitively it actually impairs our ability to have a productive, nuanced conversation. We're just in this agitated state. Working on the tone of one's conversational skills. So as hard as that is when we're emotionally aroused, to really pause, and listening and active listening helps with that, to just shut up and listen, and have a more gentle response. Gentle doesn't mean that you can't be forceful with your argument. It's the tone and the words that we use that convey that. It's cultivating humility in oneself, that as much as I have convictions about my point of view, there's a huge sea of things for me to learn, and things that I don't know and are in my blind spots. And then real openness to divergent ideas, and welcoming them, because divergent ideas is what creates a really thriving organization. So I think it's a combination and bundle of things that we can all practice, and it's a lifelong journey. It doesn't ever stop. I don't care where you are in your life, in your career. You can reflect back on the last argument you had with a loved one, someone that you care about, that became something that you are not, and you reflect back on it and say, Jesus, I could have really done that a lot better had I implemented or utilized a different set of approaches to it. So it's a lifelong process.
I'm curious, how large is your leadership team within Mend, and how do you, as the leader, teach your leadership team to incorporate and integrate empathy into the business strategy?
Yeah, we're growing. We've got a kind of a core leadership team of roughly kind of 7 people. We are always working on culture, and a part of that is kind of the skills required to be effective in a fast growing organization that has a lot of moving pieces, a lot of stress, and a lot of pressure on people. So I taught a meditation class to my full team. It was 2 weeks ago. We do these lunch and learns, and part of that was learning mindfulness meditation, and learning the skills of breathing and being present, and all those types of things. So we have a health channel in Slack, and part of health and wellness in our channel is sharing this kind of content. So you can be sure that I'll publish this into our Slack channel when this gets published. So we take a lot of time to invest in our well-being, and part of our well-being is learning how to be effective with other human beings, because ultimately that's what it's all about in a company.
I love that. And as you're talking about teaching the mindfulness and stuff, one of the things that I always like to do with executives is, because we're all so busy, right? Everyone's busy and overwhelmed. There's all this stuff going on. And in order to keep that, make it less likely to get triggered, is I teach the executives between tasks, like when we end this phone call, to just shut down, take a few deep breaths, do that breathing exercise, and ask yourself, all right, what's my next task, and how do I want to show up? Who do I want to be when I get on that next phone call, when I start answering that email, when I start working on that next project? And I think that fits very well in with what you're teaching with your executive team.
Yeah. Yeah, I always start with whenever I teach a meditation class, and I used to do it at Deloitte as well, and it became very popular. I always start with the science to anchor people in the fact that this is not woo-woo stuff. There's real
Absolutely.
merit and science to it. And there's been, 400, 500 plus high quality studies published on, some of the things that are happening physiologically. I'll share an interesting anecdote about what you just conveyed, is that in that moment of difficulty, how do we take a pause and utilize breath as our strength? I recently did a cold plunge in Toronto with my brother, had signed me up for it. And it was my first cold plunge that I did. So one of the keys to making it through a 2-minute cold plunge and minus 150 or whatever it is temperature is breath. So you get into the water and it's overwhelming at first, but then if you can get control of your breath, then all of a sudden it's like magical. You begin to become very calm and comfortable in that environment. And the cold plunge instructor was talking about the benefits, and there is very science on whether or not there is benefits to inflammation and this, that, the other. I'm not sure that I've come across anything that demonstrably proves it. But certainly one of the things the instructor said is, if there's no other benefit, at minimum, putting yourself in a very, very difficult situation and learning how calm you can be in that situation is a profound skill to develop. And so that's what you're teaching your executives is, we have this thing called breath, and it activates our parasympathetic nervous system. And if we can learn those skills, you can put yourself in any situation and learn how to be very zen and calm through it. And that allows you to be more, the rationality part of your brain and the judgment part of your brain, and the things that we really need to make sound decisions in difficult situations, allows that part of the brain to be more active versus suppressed as a result of the heightened state of arousal.
Right. It goes back to Kahneman's not thinking fast and slow. When you take that moment to pause and breathe, it lets your brain get into the slower processing, rational decision making.
Yes.
So I like that. The cold plunge is I've admired people who could do that. I don't think I could. When my kids were little, I used to tease them when we go to a pool somewhere. I'd say, all right, if you're going to drown, do it slowly, because I have to get used to the water before I try to save your life.
I'll be honest with you. I'm one of those people that when we go to the ocean or the beach or whatever, I'm the last to get in because I don't like cold water. But I knew this was something that I needed to overcome. And I'm so glad I did it, because not only is the exercise of it kind of building a new muscle, when you get out of the cold plunge, there's this bliss that you feel, there's this lightness that you feel that is really incomparable to anything else. So while it was a difficult thing to do, it was a really enjoyable experience overall.
Oh, that's cool. I'm impressed. Curious about when you're hiring employees and you're in the interview process and recruiting. How do you have a way that you try to zero in and say, how empathetic might this person be, and how are they going to fit into our culture here? I know that's almost as important, if not more important, than their skills, their technical skills, because those could be taught. So how do you tell if they have that right mojo for you?
Yeah, we talk a lot about kind of values in the organization, and one of our values is interdependence. We've got 3, sort of courage, interdependence is one of kind of the key things. And while there is no hard science that I've come across in the process of recruiting to really eliminate those kind of hidden qualities and attributes in a 30-minute conversation with somebody as to whether or not they've got that real DNA that you're looking for, certainly you get a feel for it, and through their body of work on the things that they've done and the things that they've gravitated towards, are they really a mission driven person? Is what I'm doing in healthcare and health and wellness something that is going to really resonate with this human being? Do they demonstrate through the things that they've volunteered in, or et cetera, that they've got a real passion for working on important causes? And then through the course of a conversation, you start to get a feel for, who this person is. But I mean, I'd love to, you're an expert in this stuff. So I'd love to hear from you if there's any more sort of hard, kind of tangible ways of teasing out, empathetic qualities. For me, it's been a feel more than a science in trying to uncover that.
For me, it's all, well, I'm a big stickler on behavior-based interviewing, right? Because how someone's behaved in the past is how they're going to behave in the
Right.
future, 9 times out of 10. So
Yeah.
I will just ask question after question after question to keep digging in, because they know that the answer someone gives you the first time usually isn't the accurate answer. It might be a piece of the accurate answer, but if you ask more questions, you'll get to it. And a lot of times you can find that empathy thing by when you'll ask a question, like a pretty common behavior-based interview question might be like, tell me about a time when you had a disagreement with a coworker. And they'll give you this perfect little scenario and how they solved it and how they did it. But if you keep asking questions that lead them back to that story, you'll get to the root of it, and you'll hear that person's heart. Like it's really cool to watch. I love doing it because it is kind of a science.
Yeah, and we do use behavioral interviewing here. The technical hard skills, many skills can be taught and learned in the course of doing one's work, but it is really those hidden soft skills that make or break whether or not an employee is going to be a truly exceptional employee. So it's something that I have said to some of my senior leaders that I want to pay a lot more attention to as we hire, is the passion and the fire and the empathy and the humanity and all those things, because being in a startup is not for everyone. It's like I say to everyone, it's the ultimate roller coaster ride that kind of seems to continue forever, and it requires a certain type of person to thrive in this environment. So thank you for that feedback. But we'll get better and better and better at using behavioral interviewing techniques to identify those core things that we really think are important.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun when you really get into it. There's a lot of body language things you can tell. They look down, that they look up. It's really cool stuff. I'm curious if you've ever found it in your career, in your journey, because we're all humans. What's time that you maybe found it really challenging to remain empathetic and remain in that person you want to be when that trigger is happening? Have you ever found a really
Oh, for sure. I mean, I know my triggers, and I know one of the areas that I get very triggered in is and this can be in like the personal domain or in the professional domain, is I pride myself on operating at a certain level of kind of ethics and morality, and being focused on core kind of principles. And if I ever feel that coming into question in any type of scenario, I get triggered by it and I get very defensive, because I'm like, I am anchored in core principles and ethics, and kind of how dare you kind of question any of that. We all are susceptible of this, because we are, as we go through our careers, we become confident in our point of views, and we learn, and I invest a lot of time in reading and learning. When someone challenges our point of view, sometimes if it's not done in a way that is most productive, that can cause arousal on our parts, and then we react. And that happens to me in my personal realm more than it does in my professional realm, particularly with my brothers. They find a way to trigger me, and I find a way to trigger them. I mean, we've gotten a lot better as we've gotten older. But then you always reflect. My brothers and I have gotten in terrible arguments and fights, and I reflect on it. I go, God, that just wasn't me, and that wasn't him. And how did we get ourselves into that place where we've said hurtful things to each other, and that's so not us. And so I always regret it, and they always regret it. So I'm learning. In the professional realm, I've done, I think, a pretty good job of employing the skills of empathy and listening, active listening, and being thoughtful. I think I can do a lot better job in the personal realm with my brothers in particular, to employ those skills. But it's a journey, and it is a skill, though. That's the important thing to emphasize, is we can all get better at it, and it yields tremendous results when we get better at it. We've had situations at work where really smart colleagues have disagreed, and that's caused emotional arousal and disagreement and bad hurt feelings and all that kind of stuff. And I've had to utilize, everything that I've learned through all of my readings to kind of intervene and play that mediator role and get people kind of really, firing on the same page, and that's worked really well. But it is a skill that one needs to invest in.
Absolutely. I think you hit on two key points there. And one of the ones when you talk about siblings, and it's so easy to, and it's back to dark drivers, right? These subconscious triggers. It's probably something that happened when you were like 5, that there's that rivalry there that's triggered as an adult that takes you right back to that, and you react like that 5-year-old. And we're never proud of those situations. And then when you talked about it from the professional dynamic, we always, as leaders, we talk about like peeling back the onion to get to the real core. But I like to think of all of us as walking around, and it's similar to the iceberg theory, but it's a little bit different, because when you're walking around in your corporate environment and you're going about your day, if you can just imagine yourself that you're walking in like chest high deep of water. And as you go through your day, there's a million little beach balls all around there that you're holding down, and any one of them can come up and smack you in the face when you least expect it. And that's that trigger. And that's what's, it sounds like you really are able to recognize and know that they're all there in your, under that water, ready to smack you. And you've got some really solid ways of keeping them in control. But even you are admitting we can't always do it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of a conscious effort of practicing meditation and reading, and maybe it's a part of kind of the maturation process, and I've gotten older and learned more. I was a far more opinionated person when I was younger, arrogant and confident, and everything that I thought was in my head was correct. And I think humility is a really powerful driver and tool in all this, is realizing that one's perspective is just one's perspective. Seldom are there absolute truths, and in business seldom is there just one perfect answer. And so being humble about all of that allows one, I think, to, when a ball comes and hits you in the face, to realize that you can moderate one's reaction to that, be humble in that particular situation, learn from it, and move on. So, I wish I was this way all my life, but I wasn't, and learning and growing each day.
Do you find it more challenging today with the political divisiveness that is all around us? Sometimes that creeps into the workplace. I think quite often, especially in smaller companies, we end up gravitating to companies that have a like mindset as us and hold the same values. But that theory that I'm right on all counts, that's seeping into society in a big way. How do you think we as leaders in society, how can we add value and help people be more understanding, and I could be wrong, and some of these things in society?
Yeah, I'm deeply troubled by the state of politics in our country, where if you really truly unpack the core issues and concerns, we have so much more alignment than we do misalignment. And it really just takes a dispassionate conversation to realize, oh my God, on all these, 6 or 7 major things that we call ourselves conservatives or Democrats on, we're actually pretty darn aligned on it. And then, of course, in the realm of foreign affairs and the trouble in the world, I'm just deeply concerned that we should be further along than we are in our evolution and our ability to deal with these things. So, what do we do about it? I think as leaders, we can be more active about really trying to advance skills in our folks on active listening, on dispassionate discourse, on the topic that you guys have taken on, in empathy. And there are skills to each one of these things. For example, one of the active listening skills that's really quite profound is an exercise that anyone can do with their spouse or their sibling or their colleague, is have a conversation. When the other person's talking, just close your eyes. The other person speaks, replay back when you open your eyes what they've said. What that does is the act of closing your eyes actually gets, and then actually repeating what they said, gets you to actively listen. Because you can't cheat it. You're repeating everything. You're supposed to repeat everything they've said. And then they do that, and you have that exercise. So there are a number of these types of tools, techniques, and skill building things that we can work on. And it needs to be a constant. You can't be one and done with these things, because we are humans and we are flawed, and we fall back onto the patterns and habits that we've developed over decades and decades. And those need to be undone. And meditation is a part of that. And so these things need to be repeated over and over again until they actually do become a habit. So what you're doing in writing your book is important. What I'm doing in writing my article on dispassionate discourse is important. And I think we need to continue to have a voice on these really important topics on empathy and active listening and dispassionate discourse and so on and so forth, so that we make sure that we're advancing our ability to have a conversation with each other. And no matter how difficult that conversation is, no matter how far apart we are, we can get a little closer by the end of that conversation. That much is guaranteed. And that is a better alternative than becoming further apart. And so that's the way that I kind of like to look at it.
In our family, we'll have practice at our Thanksgiving table in a couple of weeks, because it'll be one political spectrum at one end of the table, another one at the other, and some siblings in the middle who just like to start trouble in the conversation. But I think you're right. Teaching that compassion and being the role models as leaders is critical. Something that you've mentioned multiple times that I'd like you to dive into a little bit more, and again, a lot of science behind it. You've talked about meditation. I'd like you to share with everyone how meditation has changed your life, how it's impacted your leadership.
I think it's been profound. I have had, and I can just tell you anecdotally what people have observed. And I think part of that is meditation, is that people have told me that there doesn't seem to be any situation in the workplace that gets you off kilter. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. And some of that I attribute, probably a lot of it I attribute to, meditative skills and being present and reflective. And so meditation, of course, is all about learning to quiet the mind and activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which has a counter effect to the arousal system. And through that, what we've been able to show in brain imaging studies is the brain is actually changing. It is actually sprouted. The neurons are sprouting new dendrites, and we're actually forming new pathways. And certain parts of the brain are actually increasing gray matter and so on and so forth. And those are all the areas that are showing these positive effects, are actually really conducive to the things that you and I have been talking about today. And so I personally believe it's had a profound effect on my development, both professionally, but also as personally. I'll just give another anecdote. I was with my girlfriend a now fiance at a bar or restaurant, and she was talking to a stranger while I was observing the stars. And I came and I asked them both if they wanted a drink, and I went to the bar to get a drink. And the guy observed to her, he wasn't mad that you and I were talking. And her response was, in the 6 months that I've known him, I've never seen him mad. And I wish that were true all the time. That's certainly not true all the time, but I do aspire to that. I do aspire to get to a place where I'm able to be reflective in a difficult situation and have a response that is productive and conducive to a good outcome versus deleterious to a good outcome. So meditation is a part of that. It's really one of the tools in the toolbox, I think, and an important one because of the actual physiological impact that it's having on reshaping and rewiring your brain that is conducive to all kinds of good benefits long term.
How long do you think someone needs to meditate? Because a lot of times people get afraid. I can't get into meditation because I have to sit there for 30 minutes and quiet my mind. What do you think it takes? Like, how much time in the beginning should someone focus on meditation to start reaping some of these benefits?
Yeah, so what I tell everyone when I'm teaching a meditation class is that your mind is going to wander. That's part of the process, and don't get frustrated with that. So when it does wander, just very gently and non-judgmental. What do we mean by gently non-judgmentally? So I'm meditating and my thoughts start to wander to my vacation or the work I have to do or the groceries or whatever, this other part of your brain and voice will say, oh, my mind is wandering. I need to go back to my breath. So don't say, my mind is wandering. Just go, my mind is wandering, very gently, and then return it back to your meditation and your breath. And if you do progressive kind of relaxation meditation, it allows you to really kind of focus your energy not only on your breath, but the muscles that you're relaxing. That makes it a little easier. I promise everyone, even the first time you're doing it, you can get into a profoundly peaceful place. I've observed that it can usually happen about at 7 or 8 minutes of deep breathing and progressive relaxation, because you've gone through the process of relaxing kind of every muscle in your body. And then thoughts will start to slow down, right? At that point, you'll have fewer thoughts. They won't be gone completely, but they'll start to reduce in frequency. And as you get better and better and better at that 7 minutes will come down to 2 minutes to 1 minute, where the real experts can lie down and start breathing, and they're in their meditative state almost immediately. So don't get frustrated with the intrusive thoughts. That's the problem we've gotten ourselves in, is that we get 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. They are the same as yesterday, 95% of them, and 80% of them are actually negative and not conducive to our well-being. And so we got to get ourselves out of that. And this meditative practice has been shown to be really, really profound in getting us out of those well-worn highways and pathways that we've created in our brains.
That's very helpful, because people do get afraid to start meditating, and just little bite-sized pieces,
Right.
what you're saying, are going to get them on that path.
10 minutes is all you need to start with. And 10 minutes, one of the slides that I have in my presentation is someone grinding on a treadmill. And then the other right picture beside it is someone just sitting with serenity. I was like, which one looks like it requires more energy and effort to you, the grinding on the treadmill or sitting there peacefully? And yet we go and grind on a treadmill for 30 minutes, an hour a day, and we can't take 10 minutes to just sit there or even lie there in serenity. So it does take practice. It does take, some patience, but, not getting frustrated with thoughts racing is the key to it. And the other key is kind of gently returning one's thoughts to one's breath and one's relaxation. And I promise you'll get better at it. And you'll get really good at it with just a little bit of exercise and effort.
And I like how you refer to just giving yourself some grace.
Yes.
Don't beat yourself up. You did say one thing about grinding on the bike. I've heard people say that, like, runners, that when they're running can get into a meditative state. Is that the same, or is that different?
It's the same in that you're very present in the moment, and your mind is not racing. So it's the same in that regard, in that you've quieted the mind and you're in this very, very focused state. It's different in that running also comes with this endorphin high and an arousal from hormones that are different from the peace and serenity that you're feeling in that meditative state. They are related experiences, but not quite the same. One is just this very tranquil feeling of peace and calm and quiet, and the other is this very enjoyable feeling of being in that run and in that place. Because I'm a big runner as well, and I know what the runner's high is all about. It's like almost a feeling of euphoria that can come into you, of just this incredible pleasure, and you're very, very focused. So they are interestingly similar, but not quite the same in my experience.
Mm-hmm. So, given your experiences and insights, how do you see the role of empathy evolving in the future of leadership and organizational culture?
Well, it's interesting that you're writing about this topic, and I was meeting with my HR leader the other day, and she's also working on a concept of bringing more deliberate psychological intervention into the workplace. What does that mean? How does it get manifested? Because we've all talked today and we've observed that, we are this really complicated bundle of experiences in psychology, and we don't turn into robots in the workplace. And so are we doing enough as business leaders to ensure that whether it's a person in our team that's had this really difficult trauma recently or some point in their past, or they're currently dealing with some, a few of my colleagues have had very significant health issues. One, and she's not ashamed to talk about it, the HR leader was diagnosed with breast cancer while she was pregnant. And it's been through this incredible ordeal. How are we as business leaders being mindful of the fact that one of my colleagues is dealing with something that is not only very physically taxing, but is playing an incredible role on the emotional tax that it's bringing into her life, and doing something about it. So, look, I think we all can become really, really more attuned to the profoundly important role empathy has to play. And then employing all the things we talked about in terms of a very active process to develop these skills, and then an outlet for when someone is in our organization feeling the weight of the world and dealing with difficulties and challenges, that there is a trained professional for that person to speak to, someone like yourself that is, got the background, the experience, clinically, professionally, to really help a person through. We're not robots in the workplace. We're human beings. And so we need to kind of constantly remind ourselves of that.
Eziah, how can people find you? Where would you like them to connect with you? And do you want them to go to your website, to your LinkedIn profile? Share where you want people to reach out.
Yeah, I love to engage with people. So, I am on LinkedIn. So you can just kind of find me on LinkedIn. Eziah, I haven't decided what kind of a voice I want to have on Twitter, because it seems to be full of a lot of stuff that I don't really want to engage with. So I haven't become active there, but I try to publish my thoughts on LinkedIn. And you will see me soon publish an article on this passionate discourse. And then my email address is just Eziah@mend.me. And I'd love to hear from your readers and listeners, and engage in things that can improve the world. That's what drives me.
Well, I thank you so much for your time today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey today. I hope that you leave this conversation with a deeper understanding of empathetic leadership and how it can be a catalyst for positive change in both your personal and professional lives. Because remember, in leadership, as in life, empathy can be a game changer. So thank you for being here. Thank you, listeners, for listening. And for all of you, leaders who care to lead. Thanks for watching the Care to Lead podcast. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos and updates.